Okay, here we go. Let's get ready for some really unintelligent discussion. Ah! Since the very beginning, G7 has had quality control issues. We kind of knew that might be the case to an extent from the beginning, since they mentioned they were going to be cutting manufacturing costs for, allegedly, the sake of pricing. But man, I don't know if it's just confirmation bias talking, but so far, Wave 2 seems to be especially rough. I'm more tolerant of factory errors than a lot of other collectors, maybe too tolerant, but even I can recognize that some of these pets should not have been sold in stores. In this video, I'm going to be going over my thoughts on the quality of G7 Wave 2. Obviously. Feel free to correct me if I get any information wrong. I'm a lot less in the loop with G7 nowadays, so that's probably going to happen at some point. Also, to clarify, I'm not making this video to hate for the sake of hate. As fun as it can be to just be a hater, it's not nearly fun enough to warrant writing a 3,000 word script. I genuinely do like a lot of G7 pets, and I don't hate every single decision Basic Fun has made with the reboot. I just don't get into that here because it's not the focus of the video. At the end of the day, I don't want to have enough material to make a 3,000 word script of nearly pure criticism, but I do, so I did. I'm going to start this off by showing errors in my own Wave 2 pet. They aren't as extreme as some people's have been, but I think they're still worth showcasing just to show that these issues are quite common. Also, for context, I'm an LPS tuber first, collector second, and whether or not I'm bothered by errors basically all comes down to if said errors would affect my ability to use the pets in a video normally. So just keep that in mind, I guess. The main error with this girl is the paint on her nose. There's so much globbed on the front and barely any on the sides. Looks like someone's first attempt at partial customization. Hey, what is this? Not even a fully rhetorical question, like this is an anomaly. It looks like something paper got glued to him then taken off. I tried washing him but it didn't help at all. Her nose is too small. I know that's pretty minor, but it just makes me annoyed. Her eyes are also slightly too small somehow. They're like the wrong shape. She has tear ducts, she can cry. Her eye shines are also struggling a bit. You can pretty clearly see the black underneath them if you look close up. Her eyes themselves aren't as shiny as I'd have expected either. They're really not that shiny if you look at it. Why is he so mad? Why is he so angry? This llama suffers from similar issues to the wolf cat. The obvious thing here is the eyes, or rather this eye specifically. When I mentioned why errors do or don't bother me, this is the sort of thing I was talking about. This is one of the ones that definitely bothers me. Both eyes also have this weird shiny stuff around them. Ironically, the eyes themselves are noticeably less shiny than other G7 pets. They're also slightly too small, again. Both him and the wolf cat are ES pets, by the way, so I'm not sure what's up with the mattish eyes. I get into that whole can of worms later in the video. This eye specifically honestly makes me really sad. This was one of the blind box pets I was most excited to get, but now I feel like I can't really use it unironically in videos because of the error. Like, he's too mad. He's just too mad. Oh god. Despite all that, I've overall gotten pretty lucky with my pets compared to other people, but that really isn't saying much, all things considered. You get the point, you don't need to hear the whole song. And yeah, I just stole a bunch of images from Reddit. I'm sorry, Reddit. Yeah, it's not great. As I said before, I think I'm more forgiving when it comes to errors than some people are, but the sheer volume of extreme noticeable errors is kind of pathetic to me. Every time I look at any G7 discussion, it feels like there's 10 new photos of some absolutely ridiculous errors. It's starting to become a little concerning. It's not even as funny anymore. The quality not improving immediately from Wave 1 to 2 is understandable, assuming, and this is a very, very big assumption, that they're planning on improving the quality of G7 going forward. It would probably take a while before we'd actually start to see that reflected in the quality of the pets we're buying. But there is no way I can spin it where the current level of quality control is acceptable at all. Yes, it is a toy meant for children more than collectors, but kids deserve quality toys too. You can't just give them garbage stuff because they're too young to know what a ripoff is. It is hard to tell how bad Wave 2 really is in terms of the quantity of errors. There's just no way to get anywhere near accurate statistics on it, and even if there was, I wouldn't know how to do it. It's probably less awful than it feels, but regardless of stats, we all know that it's not good. The fact that errors like this are even making it to shells is not good, even if it's less common than it seems. The inconsistent quality feels especially iffy when the pets are in blind boxes rather than regular sets. When I've bought G7 sets, like the tubes for instance, I look into the package first, and if I see a large error, then I'll go ahead and either find a different version of the set and buy that instead, or just cut my losses and not get anything at all. But with blind boxes, that really isn't an option. Blind boxes themselves are generally just gambling light, but we're not supposed to be gambling for the quality on top of the item itself, like, come on. We shouldn't feel lucky for getting an LPS with both its eyes in place, like that's supposed to be the norm. I don't want to use the word insidious for this because that implies more intent than I think there actually is, but it certainly feels a little icky if nothing else. This was not supposed to be the pet surprise here. Sure, in the US at least it's only $4 for a blind box, but that's still not nothing. This also applies to ordering G7 pets online. I haven't ordered a single G7 set from either wave online for this reason. It sucks because some of the wave 1 sets are still super hard to find in stores even as they're being phased out. On a different note, I really don't know how to segue into talking about this, but I just have to mention this Shutterstock card. Like, look at this. Can you see it? Because I sure can. The Shutterstock logo is just right there, which is wild. It's hilarious until you think about the implications, and that's honestly still pretty hilarious. They stole this image. Either that or they bought it but still used the version with the logo for whatever reason. Either way, it's the biggest red flag probably ever. If you were playing a game where the main mechanic was spotting red flags, this would be the tutorial. I obviously do think it's funny, but it is super unprofessional and does not speak well on basic fun and their competence or lack thereof. It definitely does not bode well for anything, really. I think it's a great example of how half-assed a lot of their handling of LPS has been. Since I started the script, there have actually been some developments about Wave 2's quality, and honestly, I don't know how to feel. Well, actually I do, and it's not happy. If you're watching this video, then you probably already know this, but in case you aren't aware, every G7 blind box has a little serial code on the bottom, and they all end with the letters ES, except as of quite recently, there are now blind box codes that end with the letters KX instead. I believe this is related to them being produced in a different factory, but I'm not sure on that. But it would make sense to me since the pets from each look remarkably different from each other. I hate this. I hate this. I'm not even going to try and be neutral. I hate these KX guys so much. Like, this is just a hate segment. This is just a straight up hate segment, sorry. For all of G7, the pets have been made with printed eyes, which has been a point of contention among a lot of collectors for all of G7. While some of the printed eyes look very passable, a lot of them end up with this grainy effect that a lot of people dislike. I personally didn't really care hugely, but I can see why someone would. It does look weird. There's been a lot of criticism regarding it, and people wanting proper painted eyes like G2 instead. And it looks like they finally got their wish! On a technicality only. KX pets have painted eyes, but at what cost? These look like fake LPS. I'm not even being hyperbolic saying that. That's genuinely what I'm reminded of when I look at them. The worst thing about them, in my opinion, is ironically the eyes. Something I really loved about G7 LPS eyes were just how reflective they are. Sure, they might not be that much more reflective than G2, but I just really love them for whatever reason. This isn't a reactionary thing. I've genuinely felt this way for ages before KX pets were even a thing. But these new ones have this weird, almost matte, but not quite quality that just sucks. Sorry. Again, they just look like fakes. It is kind of funny how much people wanted painted eyes, and then this is my reaction when we finally get them. Some people do prefer KX, by the way. It's obviously not universally hated, but it's certainly not universally loved either. As much as I am mad about this change, I do recognize that we as a community just basically begged for painted eyes for like months, and there's some chance that this is a result of that. I do not envy the customer support workers at Basic Fun. It is also just as likely, if not way more likely, that the style has nothing to do with us and is just a coincidence. Either way, there's some irony, I think. Apparently, Wave 2 pet pairs with KX style paint jobs have also been spotted. Yay! I really hope they don't try fully phasing out the ES style for KX. And if they do, I guess I'll just go back to being a G2 only collector because I cannot stand these freaks. This isn't even really a joke. I will stop getting G7 LPS if they switch to only KX. Like, I don't want these in my videos or in my house. Just a heads up, I don't know if anyone cares at this point, but the next topic will have some 2024 LPS Advent Calendar spoilers. If you want to avoid that, skip to this timestamp, I guess. Speaking of freaks I cannot stand, she is so strange. In this person's comparison, you can see that the molds used for the deer and the cat are pretty clearly not the same ones used in G2. The new deer mold looks very similar to how fake LPS deer look, and the new crashing cat mold looks worse than the fakes in my opinion. In the promotional images, the deer molds do look like the same ones people are actually receiving. It's just more obvious how off they look now that we have more real photos of them. The cat, on the other hand, is noticeably different. I understand that these pictures are obviously photoshopped to hell and back, but this isn't something you can fake that way. It confuses me because they must have had the original Crouching Cat mold or something similar at some point, but just chose to change it. It's really disappointing to me because the, I guess, prototype looks legitimately very good. Like, I want this pet, but I don't want that pet. I do wonder what the reasoning behind the switch was. Part of why I brought this up goes back to what I said about the iffiness of the quality control in regards to the blind boxes specifically. Well, this isn't really a quality control issue necessarily, it's still the same thing of paying for something you can't see and getting something you didn't really bargain for. Obviously, people can look up what the pets in the advent calendar actually look like, but they shouldn't have to do that in my opinion, and just might not think to do so. And now it's time for some pure speculation. No facts, all feelings, baby! Will G7 improve? Maybe. Maybe not. I am leaning more towards no, to be honest. At least not significantly. I'm always more inclined to be pessimistic with this sort of thing, but I do have legitimate reasons, outside of not wanting to get my hopes up too high. First of all, we have to think about Basic Fun's incentives to either improve the quality or leave it the same. Basic Fun does acknowledge the older LPS community to some extent. They chose LPS-focused creators who cater to the community to be their LPS ambassadors rather than just general toy accounts. And they, according to the ambassadors, take feedback given to them by said ambassadors on behalf of the community. But even with all that in mind, Basic Fun isn't our friend. They're a company, and their number one motive is always going to be profit. And is it more profitable to improve the quality control of G7? I don't know. Why do you think I would know? I don't know. It's not like I make a whole YouTube video about it, and it's kind of like my responsibility to be informed. On one hand, so many people are complaining, and rightfully so, about the quality of their pets. Whole comment sections and threads of people being upset by the state of LPS, and Basic Fun has probably seen at least some of that. Again, I do not envy their customer support workers, but on the other hand, how many people have actually stopped buying G7 LPS because of the issues? I'm sure some people have, but I feel like they aren't in the majority, although that could be confirmation bias on my part. What I'm trying to get at here is how much does negative feedback matter if it doesn't impact their sales in a meaningful way? I'm sure it does matter to an extent, but just how much of an extent? Like, this doesn't feel like the mistake of a company who's going to make an A-grade product if they have the option not to. Like, sorry, but... And even if they listen to the community's feedback, there's no guarantee that will necessarily have a net positive impact. Look at the KX pets. They have painted eyes, guys! They have painted eyes! Ah! Yes, I am being paranoid here. I also don't agree with some of the common takes about LPS. Like, I really don't inherently mind the personality marks on the bodies the way a lot of people do. And I don't really want fabric accessories that much. Like, I like the new plastic scarves. They are better. Sorry. So it's not necessarily as good for me if they listen to certain complaints. I'm not saying they shouldn't listen to people, I'm just mentioning this for my own sake and to give a little context as to another reason why I'm really not as thrilled about the idea of them listening to certain feedback. Also, before anyone gets in the comments about it, am I ungrateful? In a lot of ways, probably. Am I ungrateful for criticizing the new LPS? If I was filming myself rather than my mascot, I would shrug. With every video that criticizes G7, there's almost always at least one counter-argument of, we've been wanting the old LPS back for years and years, and when we finally get them, you just complain. Like, you should be more grateful. It's a take that I can't say I agree with, obviously, or I wouldn't be making this video. Yes, it is amazing to finally have LPS truly back. And yes, we all probably got used to having LPS back a little too fast, which is a very human thing. But at the end of the day, these LPS aren't free. They aren't a gift, and people don't have to just suck it up when they spend their money on something and it looks like this. As I said before, Basic Fun is not our friend. They're just a company. We don't have to be nice to them like they're a person. I do feel like G7 is held to impossible standards sometimes because of how nostalgia-focused the community can be. Like, no, LPS will never feel the same as when you were a kid, regardless of what they do, because you're not a kid anymore, and nothing can change that. Sorry. The discourse in general can be quite frustrating to engage with at times, and there are probably bigger things to worry about when it comes to quality control issues, like, you know, airplanes. But saying people shouldn't be critical of G7 is just kind of nothing. You can't make people act a certain way, especially not by calling them ungrateful, and I just don't think trying to do that is at all worthwhile. I know this isn't a take a lot of people have, and most of the people who do think this way seem to skew younger, but I've just seen these sorts of comments throughout the whole reboot, and it's just, it gets a little annoying. I'm just a bit tired. A little. Again, I'm just tired. At the end of the day, even if G7 turns to complete garbage, there are still thousands of G2 pets out there that I don't have, so it's not like it would be the end of the world. It would suck though, and I would be sad. I don't have confidence that G7 will improve much, but I do have some confidence that they probably won't get much worse for fear of people actually not buying them anymore. Because, like, you can't push the envelope more than this. Like, you really can. The KX thing still worries me though, since there isn't a common consensus on it really, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see with that. I'm not looking forward to waiting and seeing. Bye.